Good afternoon and welcome to the 2 p.m. agenda of the House Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee. Welcome to our first ever hybrid hearing. It's a little bit different to toggle between live people and not be looking at a Zoom screen. But considering this is a hybrid, I did want to welcome everybody and ask for your patience in advance as we work out different kinks for those who are online as well as in person. I'm sure we'll have this refined by the time we get to the next few hearings. But just to go over a few housekeeping items to help facilitate today's proceedings, I will call on folks in the order of government agency, organization and association, and then individual for those who have submitted on-time testimony, and then we'll move on in that same order for those who have provided late testimony. If you are testifying virtually, if you can ensure that your name comports online with what you submitted your testimony as, it'll help our tech folks ensure that you're highlighted when you're testifying, because now it's, instead of looking at our computers, we'll be seeing you on TV on a screen in the room here, in the hearing room here. And if you can keep yourself muted until you're called upon, but once you're called upon, if you can unmute and then begin to testify, that would be terrific. If you are in person, we do have a podium here for you to testify at. So I would ask those who are testifying in person to use the podium as opposed to pre-pandemic where people would come up to the table and sit down. Now we have a fancy podium if you're testifying in person. Also, the CPC committee has a 2-minute time limit. So when it starts to go off, whether you are online or in person, if you can start to summarize your testimony, that would be terrific. Just so that we can ensure we get through each of the bills. And just as a general matter, we'll take up each bill in order with legislator questions to follow after the end of testimony on that particular bill. With that, I'll just ask for everyone's continued cooperation. Everyone's been doing a great job of, no matter what their perspectives, having just very collegial and aloha-filled dialogue, and I would ask again for that to continue because I think that makes us very special and distinct often from the mainland political scene. So with that, we'll move to our first agenda item, SB 2212, relating to robocalls, and this holds telecommunication service providers and third-party spoofing providers accountable by making certain robocalls and spoofing unlawful. First off, do we have the Department of Health Executive Office on Aging? I'm guessing no. We do not, okay. Next, we have DCCA, Office of Consumer Protection, Steve Levins, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Raji Tolentino standing in for Steve Levins. The Office of Consumer Protection stands on its testimony in support of the measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have Department of the Attorney General offering comments.
Thank you, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee, Christopher Leong, Deputy Attorney General. While the department does understand and acknowledge the intent of this bill, we do offer comments on it, noting, I think, mainly because of the ever-increasing interstate and national nature of phone calls and numbers and networks. This type of legislation may inevitably regulate activity beyond the state's borders, and so that is why stated in our written testimony that this bill may be subject to a federal commerce challenge clause in states that have enacted bills similar to SB 2212. Challenges have been made, and the challenges have been successful, and we have noted some of the cases there in our written testimony. So mainly, want to bring this to the committee's attention. So I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Attorney General Leong. We also have Hawaiian Telcom offering comments. Hawaiian Telcom's not here. CTIA in opposition. Also not here. Charter Communications offering comments. Not here. And Lynn Matuso in her individual capacity offering support. Also not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2212? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? So different. You're right. Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item. Thank you very much, everyone. It's SB 3077 relating to the Barbering and Cosmetology Licensing Act. Please note, members, that we saw the House version of this administration bill. This would essentially combine and harmonize the barbering and cosmetology statutes into one chapter instead of their existing two chapters that sometimes do not have parity. Our first and only testifier in SB 3077 is Jenny Yam with the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. Jenny Yam, Executive Officer of the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. Thank you for hearing the department's administration bill. The board will stand on its written testimony and strong support. The board found inconsistent provisions in chapter 438 and 439. So this bill will just repeal both chapters and create a new one to align the regulatory structures, correct the inconsistencies, and address evolving industry concerns and needs. I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 3077? Okay, seeing no further testifiers on SB 3077, members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item. SB 2071 relating to health. And this measure, similar to one that we passed out of this committee, although not constructed exactly the same, would require all principals, guidance counselors, and teachers to perform self-review of seizure safety materials annually. It requires a seizure action plan for every diagnosed student and distribution of the plan to employees charged with supervising the student, requires public schools, private schools, and public charter schools to have an employee trained to administer seizure disorder rescue medication, and it exempts schools that do not have a student with a seizure disorder. On SB 2071, we have our first testifier, the Hawaii State Public Charter Schools Commission in support. Not here, okay. Next, we have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. Also not here. Department of Education offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Yvonne Humble, Department of Education. We stand on a written testimony and offering comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inaugurating our podium at CPC as our first in-person testifier. Next, we have the Hawaii Primary Care Association in support. Not here. Hawaii Association for Justice in support.
Aloha, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, members of the committee. My name is Evan Oy on behalf of the Hawaii Association for Justice. We stand on our written testimony supporting the intent and providing amendments to remove liability immunity language to preserve the rights of our students. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. We'll be available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Evan. Even though I don't know that they're here, I'll still call them just in case. Do we have Wed Gibson Viviani in support? Okay, not here. Don Viviani in support. We have late testimony from Kenichi Yabusaki in support. Okay. Karen Kimura in support. Melissa Yamaguchi in support. Submitted on behalf of Brennan Yamaguchi. Rena Arquinez in support. Janice Ishii in support. Sela Kimura in support. Nani Faye Paglinawan in support. Eloy Paglinawan in support. Piilani Paresa in support. And the Epilepsy Foundation, Naomi Manuel, in support. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Please go ahead. Nice to see you again.
Hi, I'm Makayla, and I had a seizure on the bus and they did nothing about it. This
You're doing great.
bill is to help kids like me.
Okay, thank you. We also remember your testimony from when it was virtual.
What started out as a normal day for her school turned into a nightmare. She told the teacher she was going to visit. The teacher did what she was supposed to do. She sent her to the office or to the hospital. By the time she got to the hospital, there was nobody there to help her. The office sent her back to her class. The teacher put her on the school bus. She got right outside of our apartment, and mind you, there's 2 people on this school bus. There's a driver and there's the aide. Somebody would think, okay, well, let's let grandma know like we normally do, that it came up here and she's having a seizure. No, that never happened. They sent my 6-year-old granddaughter to come and tell me if they was having a seizure. Why would you send a 6-year-old to tell me anything? So I got angry because she was taking so long to come inside, so I sent my daughter out. My daughter brings her in a full-fledged seizure, which nobody notified me she was having. Everybody said that the schools are covered. No, they're not. McKinley, she goes to McKinley, I was scared to death. They don't have that helper in person. There's nobody there to help her. Nobody whatsoever. And then I find out that McKinley's not the only school that doesn't have health and coverage. We fought since her sister was in 6th grade to have a helper in person in Washington visit. We had to go to the pediatrician for the the pediatric neurologist to get a notice for somebody to meet with her while she goes to her baby school. But it's all covered, it's all good. It's not. She's not, you cannot convince me she's the only child in the state of Hawaii that has seizures. There's no way in God's green earth you can get this kid. So it's not my kid. It's your kid who has a seizure in school, and there's nobody there to help him. What's going to happen? Let's think about it realistically. This could be very well your child, not mine. It could be yours. Your child has a seizure at school. There's nobody in the health room to help it. Or if there is somebody in the health room, they're busy with another student. And they still can't help your child. So what are you going to do? You going to sit there and pat them on the back and say, oh, what a good job you did? Or you want to tell the Board of Education, look, enough is enough. Let's get these schools covered and get these babies covered. Because frankly, they are somebody's baby. And nobody wants something bad to happen to their baby or anybody else's baby. Let's stop beating around the bush, get these schools covered. Enough is enough. She can't go to high school next year without coverage. Would you send your school to a school that doesn't have coverage and your kids have seizures? Or any other medical need? And that's how I look at it. It could be any kind of medical need. You take your kid there and they don't have medical coverage? Let's get it covered and say, let's not be here on push. Because heaven help you. Anything happen to this baby girl or any other baby, I'm not gonna be a nice person. Ask John. He basically had to pull me out of the rafters after her first year. Because I was beyond 80. Because it should have never went down that way. There should have been somebody in that household to help her to begin with. And then work.
Thank you. And thank you for being here in person. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2071? Seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on SB 2071? Representative Mizuno.
Thank you, Chair. Could I get Ms. Dixon back to the front again? Akela, did you want to come up and join Grandma? So, Ms. Dixon, I remember talking to you about the incident when Akela had a seizure and school officials didn't know what to do. There was no health aid worker there for her. They sent her back to the schoolroom not knowing what to do. And eventually she was put on a bus with 2 school personnel who again did not know what to do. And they told you to fetch Akela in a state of seizure on the bus, not knowing what to do. And I remember that happening and you coming to my office with Akela, very angry, having the ability to sue the Department of Education and the state had you wanted to do that. And I remember clearly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said, I don't want to sue the state. I want to protect our kids.
Right.
And so I'm glad that you're here in person with Akela to share your story, because as much as, and I'm friends with the Department of Education representative, good friend of mine, but notwithstanding that, I'm a little perplexed because what I've heard from DOE in the past hearings was that they've always had a health aide or they've always got coverage. And if they don't, they'll get a substitute to come in and cover. So if any child has a seizure, he or she will be protected and addressed. But yet you're saying no. So in your case, in Akela's case, they did not have coverage. And even with transportation, the 2 adults working for the DOE did not know what to do with Akela. Thank you for sharing your story. Akela, thank you for being brave, sharing with us your thoughts.
I would go to the school daily, twice a day, to give her medication because there was nobody there.
So there's still not coverage.
In Washington Middle there is, but again, she's human. Something comes up, she can't be there. So who's the fall on? The principal, the counselor, neither of which is supposed to be doing that. That's not in their job description. That's not their job. They weren't hired to be a health room personnel. They were hired to be the principal or the counselor. And this is what we go through. So frankly, in my personal opinion, 1 person in the health room is fantastic, 2 is marvelous.
But in Akela's case, what we're saying is that there was no one.
I don't know where Miss Nancy was, but
'Cause-
wherever she was, that's beside the point. The point is there was nobody there.
Okay, and point well taken, because time and time again at various hearings, we'll hear from Department of Education representatives that there is coverage, and if there isn't, they'll have a substitute that'll come in.
There's been many days in the counselor or the principal. That's not covered. That's if somebody there in the building, a live body, they can give out whatever they need to do. That's not okay. Because in the reality, let's look at it in reality wise. Somebody in the office. We're blessed to have Ms. Silver. Ms. Silver is fantastic. She knows how to deal with seniors. But what if Ms. Silver's not there? What if nobody's in the health room? Ms. Silver's not a health room person, but she's a counselor. And she will go through whatever to make sure she's okay. But that's, again, not her job. She is not a health room personnel. What I want to see happen is every school covered, but before they do, I want them to go out visit the see what schools do and don't have health room personnel. I bet they'll be surprised. Because I was. And I'm not saying to be like, okay, well, I expect special privileges. I don't expect special privileges for her. I expect special privileges for every child, not only who has needs, but any child who has special needs. I expect special privileges for them. I expect people to be actually physical bodies in that health room if the emergency arises. My biggest fear next year, she's going to high school. Who's going to be there for her that we didn't help her now? Can you guarantee me there's going to be somebody there next year? I can guarantee you can.
I think that's what,
Without this bill being passed, there's no way about doing that. Anybody can guarantee me there's going to be somebody there.
thank you. And I think that's why we have this bill before us today.
That's why,
Along with
that's
the-
why I hope this bill gets passed.
Okay, thank
So
you.
there is a guarantee.
Okay.
That not only her being covered, but any other child who has mental illness. But
Okay.
she's not the only one that's been applied. There's no one who's been.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. And Akela, thank you very much. See you. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Mizuno. Members, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2125 relating to liquor licenses. And this increases the maximum allowable fine for violation of liquor control laws by a licensee from 2,000 to 5,000. We have the Hawaii Food Industry Association in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Alexis Chapman on behalf of HFIA. We stand on our testimony in opposition, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Members, please note we also have Gerard Silva in opposition here. Anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2125? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 3075, relating to the franchise tax. And this clarifies that the Compliance Resolution Fund is to receive $2 million of the revenues collected under Chapter 241, provided that if the revenues collected are under 2 million, the difference shall be received from revenues collected under Chapter 325 in an amount not to exceed 2 million. Members, please note we did pass the House Companion, which was HB 2107 out of this committee earlier this year. On SB 3075, we have the Department of Taxation in support.
Yes, Chair. Jonathan White on behalf of the Director of Taxation. The department supports this bill, an administration bill, and we'll stand on our testimony other than that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Commissioner Ikeda with the Division of Financial Institutions, DCCA, in support.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Iris Ikeda, and I'm the Commissioner of the Division of Financial Institutions for the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. This bill will seeks to clarify that we will receive our share of the franchise tax paid by our licensees, our licensed and chartered banks. And as we said in our testimony, we depend on this revenue to provide supervision and oversight for our banks and other financial institutions. And I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We also have the Tax Foundation of Hawaii offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, member of the committee. This is Jade McMillan on behalf of the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We have offered written comments on the measure. I will point out one technical note that we've included in our testimony, that the bill in its present form may violate the single subject requirement, as it does have some interaction with the net income tax chapter, as well as the franchise tax chapter that is noted in the title itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jade. We also have the Hawaii Bankers Association in support. Not here, and Marvin Dang with the Hawaii Financial Services Association in support. Also not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 3075? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on this bill? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2048, relating to unlawful chop shop activity. This establishes the criminal offense of unlawful chop shop activity, and it provides for the forfeiture of property connected with chop shop activity, as well as defining this crime. On SB 2048, we have Council Chair Alice Lee with the Maui County Council in support. Not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2048? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? We did not hear the House companion of this bill. Any questions, members? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2279, relating to catalytic converters. This, in an interesting way and a different way from the House bill that we passed out, also tries to regulate the theft of catalytic converters by requiring used motor vehicle parts dealers to obtain a written statement that shows lawful sale and disposition of catalytic converters. It also requires sellers to provide copies of the receipts and notarized declarations, requires record keeping and a database. In addition to establishing theft of a catalytic converter as a Class C felony, and it also has requirements for scrap dealers. The major difference, members, between this bill and the bill that we passed out is this exists in a used parts chapter, whereas the House bill is more in the scrap dealers chapter. So they tackle the same problem, but in different ways. On SB 2279, we have the Department of the Attorney General in support.
Good afternoon, Chair. Lance Goto for the Department of the Attorney General. The department supports this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Attorney General. We also have Council Member Kelly King with the Maui County Council in support. Not here. Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu, Tricia Nakamatsu in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu on behalf of the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Department. We will stand on a written testimony in support and available for questions, if any.
Thank you very much. We also have the Hawaii Transportation Association in support. DAGCO in support. National Insurance Crime Bureau in support. American Property Casualty Insurance Association support. Schnitzer Steel Hawaii offering comments.
Aloha, my name is Melissa Pavlicek. I'm here today on behalf of Schnitzer Steel. We're a metals recycling facility that operates out of Kapolei and on Maui as Hammerhead Metals. We've been very concerned, as all of the legislature and the community has, about catalytic converter theft and how devastating it is for nonprofit and private sector organizations who suffer the theft of a catalytic converter. We asked on the House bill that you make a change, which you did do, and we've supported that bill going forward and in the Judiciary Committee. And the change is just that if we were to accept a catalytic converter at Schnitzer Steel from a person, of course, we would expect and anticipate to have to comply with all of the requirements that you're setting out in this law. If we were to accept a recycled vehicle or catalytic converter from a towing company in the ordinary course of business and their license, we would like to be able to rely on the paperwork that they have already received and submitted. So we're asking for a change. It's on page 7 and it's in our testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Melissa. we also have Hawaii Insurers Council, Mike Onofrietti in support, not here. We have late testimony from the Department of Transportation in support, also not here. Late testimony from the Department of Prosecuting Attorney of Maui in support, but not here. And Catholic Charities of Hawaii in support, but also not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2279? Seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I have a quick question for the prosecuting attorney. Trisha, are you still with us?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Given that some of the... Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Nope, never mind. Sorry, Trisha. Strike the question. I don't have a question anymore. But thank you for being here and ready. Members, any questions on SB 2279?
Sure.
Representative Onishi.
Okay, I'll ask the city and county prosecutor.
Yes.
So you heard the testimony regarding the metal recyclers. Would you have any objections to that amendment?
If this is the same language that was added to the House bill on the other side, we did have a chance to speak with HPD and they didn't have any concerns about that. It's an exception for, is it the exception for commercial vendors, licensed vendors, something like that?
It is.
Correct.
Yeah, as long as it's along those same lines, that language, then it seems fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And thank you, Representative Onishi. Members, any other questions on SB 2279? Okay, seeing no further questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2159 relating to leaf blowers. And this clarifies that the residential zone restriction on the use of leaf blowers at certain hours includes residential districts, apartment districts, and business mixed use districts. It removes the exemption on the leaf blower restrictions for government agencies except in cases of emergency. On HB 2159, we have Lynn Matuso in her individual capacity in support, but not here. We have late testimony from the Department of Transportation in support, but also not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2159? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, unfortunately, there's not anyone to ask questions of, so we'll skip the questioning for SB 2159. Our last measure, members, is SB 3078 relating to advance warning for excavation. And this applies the existing and advance warning requirements to excavators operating on residential properties and clarifies various excavation requirements and reporting procedures. Please note, we also moved the House companion out of this committee as well. That was substantially similar. On SB 3078, we have the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission in support.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Thank you for hearing this measure. We're in support of this measure, and you have our testimony available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have Able Pest Management LLC in support. Not here. Aloha Termite and Pest Control in support. Also not here. Hawaii Pest Control Association in support. Tim Lyon.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and Vice Chair Kitagawa, members of the committee. The Hawaii Pest Control Association is in support of this bill and will stand on our testimony and stand by if you should have questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. We also have Hawaii Gas in support. Julie Yunker.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Julie Yunker for Hawaii Gas in support of SB 3078, and we'll stand on our written testimony.
Thank you very much, Julie. We also have Hawaiian Telcom in support, but not here. Roy Maeda with X Termco Inc. in support, not here. Steve Russo as an individual in opposition. And Brian as an individual in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 3078? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no further questions, then we'll recess for decision making. Recess. Okay, reconvening our 2 p.m. agenda for the Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee. My thanks to everybody for being here today. It's great to have you back and for your patience as we deal with toggling between live and in person and on a TV monitor in the virtual world. First off, on HB 2212 SD2 relating to robocalls, the recommendation here will be to take charter communications amendments, as they've noted in their testimony, as well as making a conforming amendment on page 3, line 3, to make it read caller identification information, just so that it comports overall with the rest of the terminology. I would like to note, members, for the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee, in our committee report, to consider the Attorney General's comments relating to a potential violation of the Dormant Commerce Clause, as well as noting that there may be a potential issue because it's unclear if some of the content of this bill relates just to robocalls. And since the title is relating to robocalls, it might be a little more restrictive than some of the content that is included in this measure, but we'll leave that to the JHA committee to arbiter. So with amendments, members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2212 SD2 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Aquino.
Aye.
Representative Har. Aye. Representative Hashem. Aye. Representative Kong.
Aye.
Representative Mizuno.
Aye.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Onishi.
Aye.
Representative Tarnis.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 3077 relating to the Barbering and Cosmetology Licensing Act. On this, I would like to include a few simple amendments, including deleting the word licensed as a modifier in front of barber school, as that's not currently required to be licensed. Inserting a defective date of January 1, 2050. And again, for anybody watching who might be unfamiliar, deliberately defecting when this law can go into effect ensures that we have to have continued discussion on it. And we will have to go to conference on this just to double check that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's before we send something up to the governor in order to be voted, in order for him to sign it into law. So the defective date of January 1, 2050, various technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3077 SD1 with amendments, noting the presence of all members. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 2071 relating to health. The recommendation here, and I appreciate that the approach is slightly different from the House bill that we passed. The recommendation here is to pass this measure with several amendments, including on page 16, clarifying the storage requirement for the schools is for medications supplied by the parents, so that it's not ambiguous as to who needs to provide the medication. Maybe. So for the storage requirement listed on page 16, as well as making various technical and non-substantive amendments, it's already got a defective date, so we will have to go to conference on this. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Thank you. Seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2071 SD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on SB 2125 relating to liquor licenses. On this, members, the recommendation here is to insert a defective date of January 1, 2050 as it presently has a clean date, as well as making various technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing no questions then or comments, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2125 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Oh, reservations for Representative Kong. Any additional? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 3075 relating to the franchise tax. On this measure, I would like to take the Hawaii Bankers Association amendment, which is also reflected in the Hawaii Financial Services Association testimony. It's already got a defective date. But I would also like to note in the committee report that getting in order for this bill to pass, we need to reconcile whether or not there's a title problem, because the title is exclusive to the franchise tax, but this bill also talks about income taxes. So just want to note that in the committee report so that it continues to be a flagged issue that would need to be reconciled by the administration in order for this bill to pass. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3075 SD2 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next, members, on SB 2048 relating to unlawful chop shop activity. The recommendation here is to make several substantial amendments. Right now on page 3, line 17, unlawful chop shop activity is defined as a misdemeanor. I would like to amend that to be a Class C felony, because I believe that comports more with some of the other crimes that are promoting illegal activity, whether it's the promotion of gambling or other activities where an enterprise element is involved in perpetuating more than just the initial crime. I also think a misdemeanor might be a little low as penalty. I also would like to add after line 17, an additional subpoint 3 that says each separate act described in 708 1 B, C, or D shall constitute a separate violation of unlawful chop shop activity under this part, so that it's clear that a chop shop's activity should be treated differently if it's just related to one stolen car part incident versus 20 or some other fictitious number. I think it needs to be made clear that it's not just all one violation, no matter the extent of the crime and the offense. It's already got a defective date. So those would be the amendments, members. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2048 SD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thanks, members. Next on SB 2279 relating to catalytic converters. On this, I would like to make several amendments, including taking Schnitzer Steel's suggested amendment, which is an exemption, since there's already a paperwork trail as set up through their transactions, and since law enforcement is amenable to that. I would also like to make a conforming record keeping amendment for catalytic converter purchases to 3 years, as that is the time frame used for motor vehicle parts. Inserting a defective date of January 1, 2050, since this bill is presently clean, as well as making various technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, any questions or comments on the recommendation?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
With respect to the word emergency, I just wasn't clear. Is that going to be defined, or is that going to be
Oh,
clarified?
that's the next bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No
Mr.
problem.
Chairman. Okay.
Points for
I'm getting
being an
ahead of myself.
overachiever.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah. Any comments or questions on the catalytic converter recommendations? Okay, seeing none, then thank you, Vice Chair, for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2279 SD2 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members, on SB 2159 relating to leaf blowers. On this, the recommendation is to also pass this measure with several amendments, including, or actually just one amendment, including on page 1, line 13. Right now, it just says that government entities may use leaf blowers during the prohibited hours in case of an emergency, but it doesn't define emergency. So to Representative Har's question, I'd like to define, to continue, in case of an emergency as, and the amendment would be to include the phrase as defined in HRS section 127A-2, which I think comports with the intent of the bill, but doesn't leave emergency ambiguous. It's already got a defective date. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Representative Kong.
Yeah, I'll be going with reservations because I guess every Saturday morning we start at sunrise to clean up somewhere in the community. And then we specifically bought electric leaf blowers, which are actually quiet compared to the normal gas powered ones. And the bills are pricey, but we did that, in consideration. So I hate to get in trouble just by using that piece of equipment, each and every Saturday morning, but I'll be going with reservation.
Sure, very understandable, Representative. Members, any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2159 SD2 with amendments, noting the reservations of Representative Kong. Are there any additional reservations? Are there any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. And then lastly, on SB 3078 relating to advance warning for excavation, the recommendation here is simply to insert a defective date of January 1, 2050, since it's presently clean, and it gives us just one more opportunity to make sure that everything is on the up and up in conference. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3078 SD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, and thank you, members. Thank you all for being here today. This committee meeting is adjourned.